elevated supply chain disruptions look set to continue in 2023 as challenges of new technology, the war in Ukraine, high energy prices and inflation, geopolitical and economic uncertainty, and climate change test already strained economic environment, according to the Allianz Risk Barometer released this week. Now, for an analysis on how these global events may influence the local economy, I am joined by Siemens Storm's security economist, Theo Klein, to dissect the report. A very good evening to you, Mr. Klein, and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Klein, local businesses interviewed for the report identified some of the risks as changes in legislation and regulation. What could be the basis of their fear?
So we've had a number of policies in Namibia proposed by government that have not been finalized for quite a number of years. These policies sort of weigh on investor sentiment. It weighs on local business owners. Obviously, they don't want to, for example, take out loans, expand their business if they don't know what the regulatory or policy environment will look like in the future. So I think the two of the biggest policies that come to mind would be the Namibia Equitable Economic Empowerment Bill, NEEP, and then also you have the Namibia Investment Promotion and Facilitation Bill. So these two policies are very important for local businesses, but also for foreign investors. And government has still not come to a point of finalizing these policy documents. They've consulted with the private sector many times. Private sector has raised their concerns and their issues with these policy documents after reviewing them. But to some extent, we understand that private sector concerns have not been addressed to a large extent. So it can be that even in the current forms, after these bills have been revised during 2022, it can be that they are still not accepted by the private sector as they stand at the moment. And obviously, once again, businesses and foreigners, investors don't want to necessarily do business in a country where they are not certain as to what the policy environment will look like, especially NEEP, that will have an impact on your staff that you may have and the shareholders in your company and so forth. And the investment promotion bill definitely impacts foreign investors. It certainly has an influence on as to which investments they're allowed to do. And it might even say, whether the investments are allowed or not, or whether the applications are rejected and so forth. There's a lot of penalties being put on foreign investors if they do not meet certain requirements in that bill. And obviously that's very investor unfriendly. It's not necessarily welcoming foreign investors into our country either. So these are the concerns that local business owners would have, and obviously foreign investors as well, because if there's uncertainty, they won't invest. If they don't invest, we cannot create jobs, we cannot create new businesses. Existing businesses cannot expand their operations. And so you actually also then negatively impact on our economic activity.
I think cyber security is another challenge for them. Can you talk to us about cybersecurity environment in Namibia?
Yes, that is actually also a big theme globally at the moment. With regards to Namibia, I think Namibia's I don't know too much, I'll be honest, but what I do know is that Namibia has always been seen as a fairly easy target for hackers across the world or even locally to sort of hack local companies in Namibia because there's not adequate protection being put in place by various businesses. I think the businesses most at risk would be those operating in the financial services industry, because obviously they manage the money of Namibian citizens, of their clients, whether it's banks or investment companies. So obviously the risk there is that if you are an easy target because certain businesses did not invest enough money in proper protection, to protect their service and the information that's on there, then it becomes difficult to do business in such a country, because obviously as a customer, as an investor, or a business owner, you don't have much confidence that your personal information will be protected, or that your money is indeed safe in some other account that you have with a specific business. So the idea there really is that businesses locally need to increase their investments in proper software and protection to try and limit hackers being able to access their information and so forth. But obviously, this is very costly. And given the current economic times, that's not too great. That obviously is also a problem for local businesses. But that is sort of at least how I see the current situation at the moment.
Now, we know that the legislation is still not passed, but its provisions have been ventilated in Parliament where the bill can be tabled. Can you give us your views on whether the bill allays the fears of business people?
Sorry, which bills are you talking about in specific?
The bills that,
Or just general
in
bills?
general.
Yes. What we've seen is that there is a lot of pressure on legal drafters in Namibia to get certain policy documents finalized, ones that have been coming on for many years. The problem is that there seems to be a staff shortage amongst legal drafters, and that's one of the reasons why we see a delay in the process. But we do certainly know, especially from the president as well, there is a lot of pressure being put on various ministries and legal drafters to get the policies finalized and to get it done. So I think that in itself is also refreshing to see that pressure is being put on public workers to get these policies done and dusted. We have seen some momentum since last year. One that comes to mind is the Special Economic Zones Bill that was approved by Cabinet in September last year, and we look forward to the implementation of that bill, as we do expect that to be positive for the local manufacturing sector. Also, obviously, with the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board, having marketed Namibia very aggressively last year, trying to get foreign investors to come here. I think that together with the Special Economic Zone Bill will be quite positive for our economy. With regards to other policies, it's you hear quite funny stories. Either the one person that was working on the policy passed away last year, and after they passed away, sort of nothing has been happening with the policy document. But at least with most of the other policies that we believe will have a big influence on our economy, there we at least see quite a lot of momentum taking place at the moment, where policy documents have been revised throughout 2022. The private sector has been consulted towards the end of last year, and they will continue with these private sector consultations in the first half of this year. And then trying to get some of these policy documents through to Parliament where they can be finally approved. So I do see that as a positive. Obviously, we just do hope that with some of the policies, private sector concerns would have been addressed appropriately by legal drafters. But certainly, we do see a lot of momentum, which I think is also very refreshing. And this is despite there being staff shortages within government to get the job done in a timely manner.
And just lastly, Mr. Klein, what would be, or what could the possible consequences be of supply chain disruptions for the country?
So following the COVID-19 pandemic, supply chain, or rather shipping costs, have increased significantly. Local Namibian businesses told us that normally when they would import goods, let's say in one container, it would cost about $3,000. But following the pandemic, it went up to between 18 and 24,000 US dollar per container. So that's more than fivefold increase, more or less, increase in costs. And obviously, businesses can only absorb costs to some extent by decreasing their profit margins on the prices that they charge customers. But then obviously, they can only do that to some extent, so that the increase in costs have to be passed on to the consumer in the form of higher prices that they pay for these goods in shops and so forth. So, but what we have seen is we've surveyed about 8 different companies who operate in different sectors of our economy. mostly in Swakop, Walvis, and Windhoek. And what these companies tell us is that their shipping costs have decreased by over 60% from pandemic highs. So we have already started seeing a decrease in global shipping costs, or at least the shipping costs that some Namibian companies have to pay. What we do see globally, though, is that your supply chain costs still remain very high between East and West, but North and South has somewhat decreased. The reason why East and West is still very expensive is because of the zero COVID policies in China. But obviously that has now also been removed, and we look forward to the reopening of the Chinese economy. And then that should also then reduce your shipping costs between East and West, or the East and West trade routes globally. So our view is that shipping costs should continue to decrease and sort of normalize back to pre-pandemic levels. And we do see this to some extent still happening by middle 2023. And this should then be positive for the local consumer, because as shipping costs come down, as supply chain disruptions ease, not only will local businesses be able to get stock from global countries faster, but they'll also be importing them at a lower fee. And to that extent, we see either the consumer prices for these imported merchandise goods should either be relatively flat or actually on a declining trend. So in that way, the consumer might also then benefit from lower prices. But for example, when looking at cars, we have spoken to some of the local dealers, and they still do not really see supply chain disruptions easing anytime soon. But at the same time, this is also because of global car production that has decreased significantly. So for Namibians who are looking to buy a car anytime soon, they might still struggle to do so, as dealerships struggle to get stock of cars.
Thank you so much, Mr. Klein, for speaking to us this evening. We really appreciate that information.
No problem. Thanks.